Hey there, and welcome to Undoing We, Divorce and Life Conversations on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, podcast, and TV. I'm your host, Mardi Winder-Adams. I'm a divorce coach, a mediator, and someone who's been through exactly what you're going through. This show is all about helping you get through the tough stuff, the overwhelm of divorce, the what now moments, and the messiness of trying to rebuild your life. We're going to talk about real life challenges, share expert advice, and give you practical tools you can use to move forward with your life. Are you ready to start shifting from we to me? Grab a coffee, sit back, and let's get started. Hello, and I'm so excited to have you here for this episode of Undoing We, because we're going to talk about something that comes up in virtually every divorce, but it also comes up in all kinds of other areas of life. And that is the link between anger and stress and our health. So I have a true expert on this that I'm going to have a great conversation with. We recorded this a little bit ago. And one of the things that you're going to find is really interesting is Dr. Mort Orman has a completely different approach to this than other people. As a matter of fact, I actually took his training. I use it with my clients, and I can absolutely guarantee that his methods and his approach to dealing with anger and stress will virtually eliminate these issues from your life, or at least from being long-term issues in your life. Dr. Mort Orman is an internal medicine physician, and for the last 40 years, he has really focused his research and learning and course development around anger and stress elimination. Again, not management, elimination. He's created a 10-session program that's proven effective to overcome long-standing anger issues, including those caused by divorce. And what I really like about Dr. Orman's method is that it's easy. You can use it anywhere at any time on the spot. And with just a few quick self-reflective questions, you can help reduce anger and create a absolutely effective response without trying to manage it long term. You're going to recognize it, deal with it, and create a response. And you're not going to deal with that residual anger and stress feeling that many of us end up living with for days or weeks or even years of our life. And we all know the link between anger and stress, and not only mental health issues, but also physical health issues. So listen in. We're going to tease you a little bit on some of the strategies and ideas that you can use to help deal with this. And then I'm going to give you a link in the show notes that you can actually go take a look at Dr. Orman's work yourself.
I had all these stresses coming down on me, and then my patients were coming to me, thinking that I'd be able to help them with their stress, and I didn't know how to deal with mine, and so it was a double whammy, because I felt frustrated. I didn't know what to do with their problem. They would unload about, not only their health issues, but if their marriage was in trouble, or if they're in trouble with their kids, or trouble at work, or whatever. So they would unload all this stuff, expecting that I might be able to do something for them. So it all was kind of snowballing. And then the other thing is I could see over time the effects of anger and stress on my patients and on their health and on their life. So I'm sitting there watching this every day, seeing 20 patients and doing that over a period of time. Most people, when you go to work, that's not your experience. You don't see the damage that stress does over time.
Right.
Maybe you feel it or something like that. But I was actually seeing the damage and seeing people get heart attacks and strokes and get addicted to the substances and eventually get divorced or something like that because they had a lot of anger, they had a lot of stress. And so I knew that this stress train was coming for me. And I tried all the traditional stuff, traditional anger management, stress management stuff, and it really didn't work well for me. So fortunately, I made a decision to start doing personal development work very early on in my medical career. And a lot of doctors and busy people don't have time to do that, but I made it a priority. And I started learning all kinds of stuff that I was never taught in medical school. I started learning things about myself as a human being.
Right.
They send you out there to take care of human beings, but they don't really teach you about human beings.
The first person I've heard, the first medical professional I've talked to that has said the exact same thing. So yeah.
So I mean, I was learning all this stuff from some really smart people, and I was starting to realize that a lot of the ideas that I had about life, about myself, about stress, about anger, a lot of the ideas that I had weren't true. Mm-hmm. You know, they've been given to me by other people or by so-called experts or whatever. So I was finding these, you know, that I had all these blind spots and I had all these misconceptions and errors in my thinking. And it kind of opened me up, you know, to asking more questions. So I started, well, what if everything we're being told about stress is wrong? Or what if everything we're being told about anger is wrong? And so I decided to pursue those questions. And that took another couple of years of research and training with people and trying to understand what was true and not true. And then I finally hit upon a system that I developed from all that exposure that finally enabled me to just cure most of my stress problems. So I went from having a tremendous fear of public speaking. So I could never do this back then.
Wow.
And I never would have volunteered to appear. I would have been shaking, trembling, just a basket case. But I figured out how to get rid of all of my public speaking anxiety. I had a terrible track record in my relationships with women. They're just horrible, failure after failure after failure. I was able to turn that all around. And I also had a lot of anger. I mean, I was a very angry guy. I was very volatile. I get angry at my patients. I get angry at my parents. I took up tennis and I was like John McEnroe on the tennis court. You know, stomping Some people may be too young for that reference, but he was in his prime when I was taking tennis lessons. And I would stomp around the court and thrash my racket and yell at myself and scream and bother the people and playing on either side of me and at the racket club that I joined. And I just couldn't control it. You know, I just nothing. And then until I really had a bunch of these insights, and then I was finally able to stop being an angry person.
Yeah.
And the last 40 years of my life, I've had almost no anger at all.
Wow.
And when I do get angry, I know exactly what's causing it. I know exactly, not just what's causing it outside, but what's causing it inside me.
Right.
And I can identify those causes. I can deal with them very quickly. And in 30 seconds, a minute, you know, I can realize where I misperceived something or made the wrong assumption or didn't see things exactly as they are. And then my anger goes away. You know, didn't have to punch a punching bag. I didn't have to run 5 miles or take deep breaths or count to 10 or any of that kind of stuff. So, so I discovered I discovered the system for getting rid of most kinds of stress that I was experiencing. And then I said, well, God, this is so important. You know, as a doctor, this is so important to people's health. I've got to teach this. You know, I've got to share what I've discovered. And so I started putting on seminars and workshops, and I've done hundreds of them over the last 40 years with all kinds of people. And just trying to get the word out there, because what I discovered about stress is almost the opposite of what's being taught by stress management experts. And it's very hard to get the message out because that message is so strong and everybody's being encouraged to manage their stress. And it's really not the best strategy.
Well, and I completely, you know, I understand that. I think this whole idea of managing stress and managing anger, it's sort of like, you know, if you've got, if you just got hit on the head with a baseball bat in a game and somebody tells you, oh, just take a Tylenol, don't worry about it. Every time the pain comes up, just keep taking Tylenols. That's not going to cure the issue. So I really like that message that you've got is getting to the, you know, and I've always, in my work, I've always kind of suggested, and I don't know if I'm right, so correct me, but anger is really a secondary emotion. There's always something else that goes on before that.
Well, it's secondary. Anger is secondary to a lot of things, but one of the things it's secondary to is our automatic thought processes and our automatic behaviors. So whether there's emotions behind them, it's still primarily, you got to be thinking in certain ways. You've got to be looking at the world in certain ways to get angry. Yeah. And if you're not looking in those ways, you're not going to have the emotion of anger. You may have some other emotion. You know, you may have the emotion of guilt or anxiety or frustration or something else. But anger, each emotion has a very specific cognitive behavioral program behind it that we don't normally see. It's just like we don't see the programs in our computers.
Right.
You know, word processing program, the operating system. We don't see those programs. But if they weren't there, we wouldn't be able to do anything with our computers. In the same way, we don't see the oxygen in the air, but if it's not there, we're in big trouble. You know, right. So there are these automatic thought. They're not conscious thoughts so much, although they can be, but usually it's just knee jerk. Something happens, you see something, and your anger just emerges, knee jerk reflex. And what's happened is what's got triggered in your body is certain specific ways of thinking and behaving that most people have never been taught to identify.
Yeah.
So we're all at a loss on what to do about our anger, because all we can do is rearrange the external circumstances of our life if we can, to try and reduce those triggers. And nobody's taught us how to deal with anger on the inside.
And I love that thing that you just said, and that's going to tie right in with what a lot of the people I work with, or people going through a divorce, whether they're men or women, are dealing with, is the anger is the partner, or the trigger. They, in their heads, if they could just get rid of the partner, not literally get rid of the partner, but get out of the relationship, all of a sudden their anger is going to go away. And that's not true. I find people, that actually get more angry, more hostile. They typically engage the partner, even if the partner wants to walk away and go, okay, I'm just going to be the best co-parent I can be, go live your life and be happy. People will keep trying to get back into that anger situation. So do you see that as kind of what you're addressing when you teach people about how to manage this?
Yeah, well, again, not how to manage it. I teach people
how to cure it, how to treat it.
Yeah, but you see how ingrained the mentality is in our society. Everybody thinks in terms of managing. No, but when by the time you get to divorce, there's obviously things that led up to the divorce, and there are big blind spots that both people have in the relationship about what happened, what went down, and their angry feelings and their upsets and all that kind of stuff. So there's already a ground of a soil of anger, which contributed to the divorce in the first place. And then you go through the divorce and the anger gets worse, maybe. Right. Or even after the divorce, you can have bitter feelings about how it resolved, who got what, how people are behaving now. If you have kids involved, it throws in all that dynamic. Yeah. So it's anger, anger, anger. Okay. And nobody's teaching people how to deal with the anger at any one of those stages. I prefer to teach people how to deal with their anger before they get to divorce. If I can get to them early and say, here, look, you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage, anger is going to come up. Here's what you need to know. Here's some skill set you need to have so it doesn't ruin your relationship. But then if I don't get people until they get into the divorce, then I certainly want to help them go through the divorce with as little anger as possible. And even more importantly, so that they can, on the other side of the divorce, they're not still bitter and angry at their ex, and they don't ruin their next relationship, whatever they get into, because they haven't learned where the anger came from in the first place through the pre-divorce, the divorce, and the post-divorce. It's all the same place. It's coming from those same thoughts, those same triggered automatic ways of looking and thinking that I think it's criminal that we aren't taught this by the time we graduate high school. And certainly college. Every college graduate should understand what the thought patterns are and the behavior patterns are that cause the most common negative emotions that we experience in life. And if we're not teaching them that, then we're doing them a big disservice.
Yeah. Well, and especially, do you think that and this is going back to your initial conversation or your initial information you shared, do you think the medical field, and I'm not just picking on the medical field, because I don't think counselors do a lot of this work. I think they're doing it, but they're doing it from the management side rather than the proactive side. Do you think that that's being addressed at all in?
No, I was in that role for 23 years in my practice. No, we put Band-Aids on things. We give people medications. We teach them stress management techniques or whatever. We just teach them how to deal with the symptoms.
Right.
And most of us don't know how to deal with the causes, so we can't teach our patients that. Right. Now, at some point in my practice, I became aware of all that stuff, but I didn't have time, to do that because I'm taking care of 20, 30 patients every day.
Right.
And I'm going to the hospitals and taking care of patients. So even though I had the knowledge, I couldn't really do much in my practice, but then I did start to do seminars and workshops, and some of my patients attended them, and, to try and convey those skill sets. And I realized it was a failing of the medical profession. It's a failing of the education system. And it's a failing of the stress management industry.
Right.
Is that we're not teaching people how to identify the internal causes of their various stressful situations in life.
Yeah. So how do, if you were to have somebody come to talk to you about this stress management, no, I'm so sorry. Stress, what do you want to call it? Stress elimination.
Elimination, yes.
Elimination.
Yes.
If people want to come and talk to you about that, they're going to come and say stress management, though, until you straighten.
No, they're going to come and say, Doc, I'm stressed. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry, go ahead.
The first thing I'm going to do, okay, the first thing I know, okay, when a stranger sits down in front of me and says, Doc, I'm stressed, okay, the first thing I know is their problem is not stress. Okay. I know that 100% without even knowing anything about them, okay? So the first thing I will do is I will encourage them, I would say, let's take this word stress and put it aside for a minute, okay? Are you having any problems in your life? Because that's really what stress is. It's just a word we use for problems. And then they'll start telling me the specific problems they're having. You know, I got promoted and I don't know what I'm doing and I have all this pressure, or my kids started using drugs, or the family died, or I'm having trouble with my marriage, or I'm financial, or COVID came and now my business is shut down. Who knows? There's all different kinds of problems we can have. Or I'm angry all the time. I'm fearful all the time. I'm worried all the time. It can be emotional things too. So there's this whole gamut of human problems that we put under this banner called stress. And then people have taught us to think in terms of deal with your stress, which is a buzzword. It's a unicorn.
Sure.
You can't get at it. Okay. Well, they should be teaching you to stop trying to deal with your stress and focus on the problems that you're having when you feel stressed, because there is a stress response. I mean, there is all that physiology that gets stirred up that people study. So I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But what's driving that are the problems that we have, the unresolved problems we have in life, or the recurring problems we have in life that are stimulating our bodies more than should be, keeping us from being calm and relaxed, causing us tight muscles and headaches and indigestion and all kinds of other symptoms, and the whole thing is you need to focus on your problems, and then you can get at the causes of each problem. So if anger is one of the problems, which is what I focus on with people, I say, okay, if you're having anger and that's a big part of your issue with stress, then let's look at how you understand anger. Tell me what you think is causing your anger. And they'll say, well, it's my spouse, or it's my kids, or it's, and I would say, great, that's true. Now, what about the other 50% of the puzzle pieces? And they'll go, what? What are you talking about? I'm talking about the causes within you. What's being triggered within you. And they say, what are you talking about?
Right.
Because that's the blind spot. Okay. So then I have to help them understand what's in that blind spot. So I said, here's how you're thinking when you're angry. Here's how you're probably behaving when you're angry. And nobody ever taught you that before, right? And then we go, yeah, that's new information, but I can see that it's true. I am thinking that way. I am responding that way. And I said, okay, good. Now let's look at those specific thoughts and behaviors. Is this thought actually true? They'd never looked at it before because they didn't know what it is to look at.
Right.
And is this one true? And is this one true? And is this one true? And usually you'll find in the string, you'll find one or two that are not totally true. You misperceived something, you misunderstood something. You were taught to believe something that isn't accurate, or you have a behavior that, that is making the anger hang on long. I mean, most anger should go away in 30 seconds, but it doesn't, because we do things that make, we ruminate over the situation. We bring the anger back. We focus on how justified we are to be angry.
We tell ourselves those stories about how we've been victimized.
Or we seek revenge, or we seek revenge, or we want to hurt the other person.
Right.
None of that gets at, okay, how am I contributing to my anger?
Right.
And what parts of it are true and what parts of it are not true.
Yeah.
And that's the analysis you really have to do if you want to eliminate anger. Now, if you want to manage it, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, you just count to 10 and take some deep breaths.
Or get a punching bag, and every time you get angry, just work on the punching bag or run. I knew people, every time they got angry, they would run 5 miles. They felt a little better, but their marriage didn't get better.
Right. Yeah, because they're the same person. What's that saying? No matter where you go, there you are.
There you are.
You have to change what you're doing. So this is really refreshing. And honestly, a lot of the divorce coaching I do is when clients come into me, they're like, that's the first thing they say, I can't take any more stress. And then we start looking at the piece by piece things. And at the end of the call, they go, wow, I got a clear picture. I feel great. I ask them, what's your stress level now? Oh, it's 1 or 2 out of 10.
Yeah, because the problem wasn't stress in the first place.
We never talked about stress.
It was whatever the things are that you help them look at differently,
Yeah.
get some sense that they can do something about, you know?
Yeah. I hope in our conversation, you were able to pick up some of the reasons why both Dr. Orman and myself really believe that anger is not someplace that we want to stay. And yes, we all get angry. Something happens, somebody lets us down, a promise is broken, trust is betrayed. All of these things are reasons why we can get angry. And you're going to have those angry reactions. But what you don't want to stay is stuck in anger. And unfortunately, I see too many people, and I'm sure you do as well, who have had a negative experience. Quite often it's a divorce, but not always. Sometimes an employer let them down. Sometimes a friend or another family member let them down. And they become, instead of recognizing the situation, recognizing that they're angry, dealing with it so that they can eliminate that anger, it's like they almost wear that anger as a badge of honor. And it just becomes cumulative over time. The more that you are an angry person, the more times you experience anger. Whether you believe in something like the law of attraction, or whether you believe that, what you surround yourself with is what you get, whatever your belief is, we know that when people are angry and hostile, they tend to repel people who are positive, and they tend to bring in other unhealthy, angry, and hostile people. And it just creates a vicious cycle where everybody around you becomes an angry person. The good news is you can break this cycle. And there are ways to completely eliminate anger. And I'm going to tell you that the links that I've given you in the show notes connect you with Dr. Orman on his social media platforms and on his website. And I encourage you, if this is something that you're interested in or curious about, follow him, because he does give regular tips, strategies, ideas. He also does webinars and events so that you can go and actually listen to him talk about this. As a divorce coach, I use his method with my clients. Now, as everything, it is up to you to do the work. So I can give you the tools, and Dr. Orman has created those tools, and I implement them with people, but it's still up to you to make the decision whether or not you want to continue and be an angry person through the divorce, or whether you want to not just manage your anger, but actually eliminate it. Long-term anger does have a lot of health issues. Even if you're not worried about relationships, even if you're like, well, anger is natural. I hear that all the time. Divorce anger is natural. It's natural because we've been taught that it's natural, or we've made the assumption that it's natural. But if you look at people that have gone on to have great relationships in another marriage, or that have created the life they've always wanted to live, these are not people that are walking around with residual anger hanging over their head like a cloud. These are people that have learned to let go of that, whether it's embarrassment, loss, betrayal, humiliation, stress, anger. You have to get rid of those emotions. You can't hold them in your body, because we know that holding those kind of emotions is only going to create that negative cycle. So I'm going to encourage you, no matter where you're at and no matter what you're doing, if you find yourself kind of sitting in anger, or if you find that at the end of the day, you're upset, or you're frustrated, or you're stressed, maybe yoga and breathing and going for walks isn't all that's needed. And that's not a bad sign. That's a good sign if you recognize that you don't want to stay in that angry situation. There's strategies, there's ways to deal with this that are going to be highly effective. and are going to leave you open to the possibility of creating that positive, uplifting future so you can move forward and be happily single or make the decision to go into a new relationship without that anger residue hanging over you and the relationship. Thanks for sharing your time with me on Undoing We. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to share it with a friend and don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you're looking for some more support, be sure to grab my guide, 5 Strategies for Better Communication During Divorce and Other Life Transitions. The link is going to be in the show notes. And remember, no matter what you do today, do something special for yourself because you